Today, we are excited to welcome Lowell Perry. Lowell is currently the Chief Diversity Officer and VP Corporate and Community Engagement for the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. And over the course of his career, he has served in a variety of roles and industries. In his previous stint here in Cleveland, he led the Central Promise Neighborhood, a program of the Sisters of Charity Foundation of Cleveland, and served as Big Brothers Big Sisters of America Chief Diversity Officer and Senior Vice President of Corporate and Community Engagement. Prior to his most recent return to Cleveland, he served as the Executive Director of the Yuma Crossing National Heritage Area in Arizona. He has also served as CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Middle Tennessee and is a Big Brothers Big Sisters of America CEO of the Year winner and served on their nationwide leadership council. He has helped lead startup automotive manufacturers as well as develop and implement marketing strategies for a worldwide spirits company. And his public speaking career began during his tenure in the front office executive with the Seattle Seahawks NFL football team. And since then, he has done industrial training films, voiceovers, and commercials, and appeared in feature films and television. He has served on numerous local and national boards and is a graduate of Leadership Nashville's class of 2009. Please welcome Lowell.
So, thank you, Rachel, for that wonderful introduction. I'm gonna have to take you on the road. That was pretty comprehensive, and I appreciate that. Thank you all for joining today. Happy Earth Day to folks, and I'd like to call this presentation, Ohio doesn't just go to the movies, but Ohio is the movies. And for all of you, this is kind of a lightning round version of our Lunch and Learn series that both myself and Bill Garvey, our president, are going around town doing in honor of Ohio 250, the anniversary, and particularly Ohio goes to the movies. So if you're interested in signing up for a full version, you'll have a chance to at the end of this. Since we are on a clock here, I'm going to jump right into it if it's okay with y'all so that we can save time for those Q&A at the end. As Rachel said, I'm Lowell Perry Jr., a proud junior. My dad, Lowell Perry Sr., was my mentor, my hero. Don't get mad at me. He was an All-American football player at University of Michigan, first black coach in the National Football League of the modern era, and he with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I got two strikes against me with probably some of you Browns fans in the audience here. As she mentioned, Yale graduate, and you know the SAG-AFTRA actor piece is was pretty cool. We had a chance to work with people like Denzel Washington, Kate Beckinsale, Connie Britton, and our own Peter Lawson Jones recently in a film that he's going to be introducing and premiering on May 14th. I'm sure he'll put that information in the chat for everybody. Let's start with just a little something about us.
There's something you should know about Superman and Captain America and Spider-Man. They didn't just save the world. They joined forces with the Greater Cleveland Film Commission to turn production into an economic superpower. Movies don't just spotlight Cleveland to the world. They generate direct tax income to our city, county, and state. In 2024, production companies spent nearly $80 million in Cleveland alone, cash that went to nearly 400 local vendors. And in this origin story, 2,300 crew and 2,500 extras assembled to bring films to life in Cleveland last year. Now, these superheroes could have gone anywhere, but thanks to the Film Commission, studios keep coming back because we do more than help blow things up. We advise the state on policy to attract business. We pitch studios to choose Northeast Ohio, and we train local workforce with the skills to leap into high-paying careers. There is more production, spending more money, and hiring more people in Northeast Ohio than ever before, thanks to the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. Cleveland's secret weapon.
So that's a pretty cool introduction. You guys, I'm sure, recognized a lot of the locations that were in some of those pieces that you saw there. We're a real popular place to make movies here in Northeast Ohio, and that doesn't come by accident. Part of our pedigree here in Ohio, as I said, we are the movies in many respects. You guys probably know this young man here, Mr. Thomas Alva Edison, born in Milan, Ohio, who, along with his assistant William Dixon, created the kinetoscope, which was the precursor to the modern day projector. And, in order to go out and sell his invention, as Thomas Edison sold a lot of different things, he created one of the early films to show on that kinetoscope. It's called The Giant Coal Loader, was the name of this movie in 1897. Now, to us here that's used to all the Star Wars special effects and this kind of thing, this might look kind of pedestrian, let's say. But this was pretty cool back in the day. So that's Thomas Edison, but he was doing it to more sell that invention, which was that, like, you look into a singular scope, if you will, and you could watch it inside a box. The Lumiere brothers in France ended up taking it to the next level to be shown to mass audiences. So you all probably have heard of Warner Brothers. Well, Warner Brothers didn't start in LA. They began their enterprise in Youngstown, Ohio, showing movies around mining towns in the area. And they kind of got started in this thing with one of the brothers, Sam, who worked at Cedar Point. Show of hands here, those of y'all that have been out there and rode roller coasters at the roller coaster capital of the USA, of the world. I know I spent a lot of time there, even as a native Detroiter, coming down to Sandusky. But Sam worked down there, and he noticed people going in to watch this movie called The Great Train Robbery, and people were paying money. The Warners were serial entrepreneurs and hustlers, if you will, and they decided that, hey, this might be something we need to look into. A projector came on sale for $1,000 that included a copy of Great Train Robbery. The brothers themselves didn't have that kind of money themselves, even collectively, so they went to Dad. Dad pawned first a watch, a pocket watch that he had, kind of got him close, and in order to get it over the board there so that they could go ahead and make this transaction, he took the horse and one of the wagons that he used for his grocery store to deliver groceries, pawned that. They got the $1,000, they got the movie, and they were off to the races. So they showed the Great Train Robbery around Niles, Ohio, at a vacant butcher shop. And they picked Niles because at the time the circus was coming to town. They figured they'd have a built-in audience to come there. And they said, man, this is going pretty well. And people lined up to see the Great Train Robbery. And later on, they decided, you know what, let's start showing this thing. And we needed to open some theaters. So their first theater in Newcastle, they purchased this, they had this space. They got 99 chairs to go in there, not 100, because if they got 100, that means they would have had to come up with a license, would have been more money. So they just went ahead and did it, and their movie theater business started. Any of you that are from Shaker and have been to Atlas Shaker Square, that was one of the early Warner theaters. So if you're there watching a movie, you're there watching in history that maybe one of the brothers spent some time in. Mention the Great Train Robbery. Many of you heard of it. It's a 12-minute and 43-second video that when they started promoting it, this was what people saw. Now, believe it or not, when this came on screen, people started jumping in their seats, and when this guy started pointing his pistol out into the audience, and they thought, "Oh my goodness, I'm getting filled with lead here," like they used to say. But hey, it was a big deal. This is what it looks like. I'm not going to subject you to too much of it because in the interest of time, if you sign up for the full board lunch and learn, I'll show you a little bit more of it. But just to give you an idea, this is what audiences were treated to. I'm sure they had the tinny piano going and all the parlor sound to create some of the atmosphere. And reach for the sky, but this dude wouldn't reach. And anyway, they get him, they hog tie him, and the rest is history, as they say. The Great Train Robbery, 1903. Imagine what you were doing in 1903. So the Warners, you might not even been a thought in your mama and daddies. They might not have been born at that point. But anyway, Warner's decided that yeah, we were making a little bit of money, showing movies, but we really need to get into the business if we're going to make some big money. And so that's when they decided that it was time to go ahead and incorporate in 1923. Their first big film success was called My 4 Years in Germany, a documentary about James W. Gerard, who was an ambassador to Germany. They moved out to LA and competed against the big guns at that time, MGM, Paramount, Universal. And, a dynasty was started and they started moving and shaking. And for whatever reason, some think because of their early days in Youngstown, Ohio, they had an affinity for movies that had a gangster theme, and featured guys like Edward G. Robinson. Yeah, the frog knows everything, see? James Cagney, pushing the grapefruit in the girl's face. The one, well, I forget which one it was, White Heat or one of those. I like some of these old movies. Humphrey Bogart and all. So people started referring to them as the gangster studio because that's what they were showing. And those of you that follow history will know that Youngstown had a reputation as being one of the toughest cities in all of the country. Some might tell you that are from Ohio that it still has that reputation. But, what's real interesting to folks? People in front of the camera, right? I know as an actor myself, it's exciting for me. And there've been a lot of very popular folks that have kind of come through Ohio in many respects. Dorothy Dandridge, widely considered one of the most beautiful women in the world at that time. Jane Kennedy, Halle Berry. Jane Kennedy was the big crush that guys, my age growing up in Detroit had a crush on. Both of them were raised in Ohio. Both of them were Miss USA Ohio winners and went on to compete in the Miss USA pageant. Um, this is an interesting young man here, Marlo Taylor, one of the top sound mixers in the industry, a member of the Academy of Arts and Sciences, Motion Pictures, that votes on Oscar winners every year. He's one of the few sound mixers that's in there. Cleveland. How many folks that watch Sanford and Son, in the evenings? That was one of my favorite shows to watch. My dad and I, LaWanda Page, Aunt Esther, Cleveland. And the list goes on. You probably recognize some of those other faces. Arsenio Hall, obviously, who was born here. I know you recognize a number of the people on this page here. The Russo brothers from Cleveland, Benedictine High School. Carrie Coons, one of the top folks in the industry right now with The Gilded Age, which is a great show. She also was in the Avengers, both Infinity Wars Endgame as the big blue meanie that was with Thanos. Isabella Marquez was Hawk Girl in Superman that you just saw a little bit of that clip. She also is a big HBO star in The Last of Us with Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal. I know you recognize this guy here, Mr. Steven Spielberg out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Lillian Gish, who was one of the early stars of film, is from Springfield, Ohio. Carrie Coon, who I mentioned, was Copley. Paul Newman. Who doesn't know Paul Newman? You know what? I mean, this guy You might think that the Kelsey brothers are the most famous people to come out of Cleveland Heights. Some would argue that it's Mr. Newman. Why does Ohio love horror movies so much? We just the newest one that is coming out here called Buddy, kind of a Barney goes mad and starts killing kids. I hear it's pretty funny and tongue in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. But Ohio has a pedigree in this area in this genre. Wes Craven. Any of you who are Freddy Krueger fans, Nightmare on Elm Street, or watch the Scream movies and all, he's a Cleveland guy. Now, I don't know if anybody else on this call is like me, who grew up in Detroit, remembers a guy named Sir Graves Ghastly. He used to do this campy show on the weekends that would introduce these horror movies that would come on that my dad and I would sit up and watch. He had this weird laugh and all. I didn't realize it, but Sir Graves was a guy named Lawson J. Deming who was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and became a big star out in Detroit. Any of you Halloween fans, the most recent ones, James Jude Courtney was Michael Myers in those later films, and he was raised in Garfield Heights and Bedford. Now, how do we want to keep these movies going? Yes, we've got a pedigree. Yes, we're trying to continue to build on that legacy that we have. Thus, enter the Greater Cleveland Film Commission. So, we advocate, attract, educate the local workforce. We'll talk more about that in our bigger sessions, and maybe we can elaborate during the Q&A. We do industry workshops. Our film skills is our work that we've been doing with young folks at high school age. You might have saw in one of the video clips in that sizzle reel that I showed you, a young man holding thing. And that was something that a group of high school kids did as part of that program. We do intro training sessions for people that want to be in this business as individuals or small businesses that are interested in competing for some of the economic windfall that comes when productions like Superman that come to town. Our quarterly media mixers are cool events that you don't want to miss and that you need to show up for. We do a Film Forward documentary spotlight every February and a workshop that goes along with that weekend, because look, documentary filmmaking is different than making a theatrical feature film. And we talk about all of those things at our sessions and again, elaborate a little bit more in our full-blown Lunch and Learn presentation. A little bit about what we achieve statewide. We like to talk about that as opposed to about just what we do. Nearly $1.4 billion in gross economic output since the institution of the tax credit. And if you don't have a tax credit, you don't get movies made. We are the 1,000-pound gorilla here in Northeast Ohio. So 70 to 80% of that number belongs to us. Over 7,100 full-time equivalent jobs. So we're creating jobs, we're creating, more importantly, career opportunities for individuals and enterprise opportunities for small businesses that want to expand into the lucrative film industry. We talked about some of the, on that video about the number of crew and background that were hired. The big number there is almost 131 million in production spend just in 2024 to 2025 alone. Here's an example of some of the earnings potential that's there. Again, we go into this in greater detail in our full sessions. We are a 501c3, meaning that we don't get a penny of that 131 million that I just talked about. We depend on the generosity of foundations, corporate benefactors, individuals like yourselves in order for us to continue to keep film rolling here in Northeast Ohio. And, the important number on that, $344 for every private dollar invested. I guarantee you, anybody on this call, if somebody told you, I'm going to give you $344 for every dollar you put in, I'd be writing my $100 check right now. So that's kind of the lightning round of what we're talking about, film in Ohio. please connect with me to schedule one for your corporate, your organization. Maybe it's your fraternity, your university group. We're happy to come out and share with you. You don't have to twist our arms in that regard. So, with that, Rachel, I'm gonna stop sharing and we'll open it up for questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And before we jump into questions, fun CLC fact, the Russo brothers did our Look Up to Cleveland program back when they were in high school. Another fun Cleveland connection. So,
Nice.
Lowell, for someone who is interested in more film history, in Ohio, Cleveland, we have such a rich history. Where should one look? Where can we really learn more about all that has happened across
Mhm.
Ohio?
Well, there are a couple of things that are happening right now. Obviously, you can tap into our website where you can sign up. We have a lot of information on there. But right now, there's a cool exhibit at the Western Reserve Historical Society that's called, History on the Film on the Cuyahoga and Hollywood on the Cuyahoga. And it is very cool. All kinds of things about local Cleveland film. There's one of the there's a Harold Crawford, who's a top costumer who's dressed people like Cary Grant and some of the big names in Hollywood, has an exhibit there. There are pictures of clothes of early Hollywood folks, and you can see how small a lot of those actors really were and are. I mean, like Alan Ladd, I think, who's kicking behind in all these cowboy movies, was like 5'2", in heels. So yeah, I'd say would be one thing that you should definitely try to do before the end of October, is go out there and check that out. That'll give you a real in-depth viewpoint of the history of film here in Ohio.
As you and the Film Commission are working with various producers, productions that are looking to come to Ohio, what are some of the things you are hearing about the needs that they have, and how might Ohio, Greater Cleveland really meet the needs for those productions?
Mhm. Well, that's one of the things in the primary role of the Film Commission. Again, I said these movies don't come here by accident. We actually and actively go out and pitch and talk about the benefits of Ohio as a place to make movies. The fact that you go anywhere in a 30-mile radius and the topography changes so much that we can be a city, we can be an old city, we can be a different country. In the movie, the original Avengers movie, outside of Terminal Tower, we were Stuttgart, Germany. So, I mean, we are a chameleon in that regard. We can do it at an economical pace. It's not extraordinarily expensive as movie making goes, as it is in some places like LA and others here in Ohio. So we talked to them about that. We talked to them about navigating the motion picture tax credit and permitting with the city and the county and places around town that people want to do things. One of the other important things that they want to know about, is there a strong local production talent workforce here? And so the education piece of what we do is extraordinarily important in being able to expand that programming of ours to meet the growing demand for people here that are grips, gaffers, people doing other things on a film set, small businesses, caterers, security people, folks doing porta potties, accountants and all, and continuing to develop that talent base here is extraordinarily important. It's one of the things that we highlight when we're talking to people about choosing to come here and do filming in Cleveland. Look, Superman was scheduled to shoot all of its location stuff down in Atlanta, but it was the work of the Film Commission, Bill Garvey and, leveraging some of his contacts as someone who was a location manager for many, many years in the industry, talking to the producers and saying, why wouldn't you want to bring Superman home? Here are some of those benefits that I just mentioned. But for those of you on this call, Superman was not born on Krypton. Superman was born at Glenville High School to the minds of the of Siegel and Schuster, and in 1933. And in some of the early comic books and all, they literally talk about Cleveland and Clark Kent working at the Plain Dealer, as opposed to the Daily Planet. So those are some of the things that we try to highlight, and people who have shot here, and James Gunn, who did Superman, had a lot of great things to say about it, is the people here. Not only we have an extraordinarily strong base of acting talent here who could certainly do more player roles and not just the number of extras that we talked about, but Gunn couldn't talk enough about the professionalism of our vendors, of our production crew, of the people that they just met around town, how friendly and welcoming they were. So those of you on this call have a role to play. If you see some of these people and you're talking to them, treat them like Clevelanders treat folks. We welcome them like they're a guest into our own home.
As we continue to hear about kind of as the industry changes with how audiences are engaging differently and technology advances, AI, what are you seeing and hearing, and how might the Film Commission be responding to those changes as the film industry progresses?
Mhm. Well, look, we try to stay ahead of the game as much as possible. Everybody's talking about AI and rushing to AI, and there's some good things about it in terms of, helping to save on some of the research and some of the post-production that's done to save time and money. Those of us who are in the industry are wanting to make sure that ethically it's being done correctly and it's not taking jobs away from working actors and writers and that kind of thing. So trying to make sure that we're a source of not only those resources that I talked about, but also that kind of information by staying up on that. It's something that's not going away. So, we utilize that in some of the conversations that we have and where it could be helpful. We had a great session this past summer with one of the gentlemen from the Russo's group that talked about the history and the future of AI and other technology. If you go over to create the Cleveland Institute for the Arts, and their programming with the volume array technology and TRG Studios and some of the other local production folks that are utilizing some of that technology. That's another place that you can go to kind of learn a little bit about what is happening in the industry. And it just gives us more bandwidth for people to do more here than simply the locations. But, maybe there might be some pre and more post-production that can be expanded into in this area. And I apologize if I'm ripping and running here. I know we don't have a whole lot of time. So, if you want to know more, again, reach out to us, schedule an info interview with us. Come out and talk to Bill and Mike and Maria and Olivia and I about the industry, about if you have a desire to work as an individual or you have a small business that wants to tap into this, we're more than welcoming here and would look forward to hosting you here at our offices in the Leader Building, which was the Daily Planet in the Superman movie.
Lowell, we thank you so much for joining us today and sharing the amazing history that our state and our community have in the film industry. And we encourage everyone who is interested to please follow up and learn more. Lowell, thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.